Shelter lines stretching around the corner. Welcome to the new world order.
I just want to be clear in terms of the definition of people dying of COVID. So the case definition is very simplistic. It means at the time of death, it was a COVID positive diagnosis. So that means that if you were in hospice and had already been given, a few weeks to live, and then you also were found to have COVID, that would be counted as a COVID death. It means that even if you died of a clear alternate cause, but you had COVID at the same time, it's still listed as a COVID death. So everyone who's listed as a COVID death doesn't mean that was the cause of the death, but they had COVID at the time of death. I hope that's helpful.
Over 180,000 Americans have died from COVID-19. This is the phrase countless health officials and politicians have stated over and over again to drill into the heads of the American public that coronavirus is actively killing everyone, no matter your health background, and it will kill you too. But there must have been a misstep in CDC reporting on coronavirus death numbers, because new CDC reports are showing that the number of deaths where COVID-19 was the sole cause of death is closer to around 10,000. The CDC has updated information in regards to how they count coronavirus deaths to read that only 6% of the 180,000 deaths are solely due to coronavirus. Other deaths added to the COVID-19 death count have 2 or more serious conditions or causes tied to that death, with the overwhelming majority of the deceased in a much older age range. And while these numbers could easily stem a lot of the coronavirus fears and anxieties we've seen, the media has still, of course, remained silent on it. Let's also not forget a couple months back when we saw the CDC send out directives for states to include probable, aka unconfirmed cases of COVID-19 infections and deaths to their official counts. Remember this council meeting in Collin County, Texas, where 1 confirmed case plus 16 probable cases of COVID-19 turned into 17 confirmed cases added to the total count?
State of Texas, DSHS has informed public health departments that they have adopted a revised definition for COVID-19 probable cases.
So for confirmed case, it stays the same. You still just need PCR. But now they've added a probable case definition. So that still gets counted towards the case count. It's different. It's not confirmed. It's probable, but it's still a case. So at the end of this definition, there are 15 different options on how you could be classified as a probable case. Based on this diagram and what they report, there's a total of 17 cases now. 1 is still only confirmed because that was that original index case who then had all these contacts underneath in orange. And all the rest of them became probable, but they are still considered a case.
These various news stories of Texas officials having to adjust total coronavirus deaths to lower than what was previously reported then followed suit. Also, despite a huge drop in overall deaths, which we can clearly see again on the CDC website, and before you say that's because we've been in a lockdown, let's not forget that there has been large gatherings of protests and rioting throughout the nation since May. Big cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York are still severely locked down, and families have been unable to open their businesses, go to church, or send their kids back to school. And if your kids are back in school, this is an example of what their lives may look like. In New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo deployed a SWAT team of 71 contact tracers and 8 case investigators upon a New York State University in Oneonta after 105 students tested positive for COVID-19. After hearing of the new cases, the university decided to suspend all in-person activity, and students will not be allowed to leave campus for the next 2 weeks. Facilities such as the library will be closed, and dining services will deliver meals to the residential halls. They will be allowed to go outside, but they won't be allowed to gather in groups, and bus service to and from campus will be suspended, as students are forced to conduct all of their classes online from now on. This type of environment sounds eerily reminiscent of another place where you're confined to a room, you have no option to leave and are told when and who you can go outside with and when you can eat. I just can't put my finger on the place. So while COVID-19 deaths continue to drop, the actual number of deaths where COVID-19 is the sole cause is closer to 10,000 instead of 180,000, Our media, health officials, and politicians still refuse to let us get back to life as usual, and New York seems to be leading the way in most restrictive states. That is, unless you're a celebrity. Then you're allowed to bypass the rules and regulations that are allegedly separating everyone from life and death. If you're an average Joe who just wants to go visit family in New York or continue working towards your college degree, absolutely unacceptable. But if you're a celebrity that absolutely has to fly in for the VMAs, it's totally fine to bypass the rules. Also, if you're a small group of Americans celebrating Trump's presidential nomination from the RNC, you're putting lives at risk. But if you're protesting in the name of Black Lives Matter and won a 55,000 person march on DC that same weekend, that's totally fine and the media will back you. Why is it that only some people get special treatment? Is it possibly because the COVID death count isn't as sinister as it seems? New CDC numbers seem to say so. This has been Savannah Hernandez for Action 7 News.
As your trusted health authority, I'll share with you why you should be more scared than ever before. But first, there's been a new twist in the COVID crisis. We just published research on the CDC website that shows only 6% of COVID deaths that we've been reporting to you were caused by COVID alone. 94% of COVID deaths had an average of 2.6 comorbidities. That means of the 161,392 COVID deaths that we've been shoving in your face, only 9,210 were legitimate COVID deaths. So does that mean we've been deceiving you and inflating the COVID death count by 152,182 deaths? Absolutely not. Because we genuinely don't believe in math. And does this new information that proves that COVID is far less deadly than we've been trying to get you to believe mean you shouldn't live with intense fear anymore? Absolutely not. As your trusted health authorities, we consider our original estimates of over 2 million COVID deaths in the US to be a far more accurate number than the 9,200 deaths that have actually happened. And of the 9,210 deaths, 90% of them were in people of advanced age, which means young people are at extreme risk because you never know when your age is going to advance by multiple decades all at once. People finding this published information and spreading it around on social media wasn't part of our pandemic because it puts people at risk of not being scared to death of this statistically not very deadly disease. Luckily, we started running smear campaigns on the sources that are highlighting this dangerous fake news that's based on facts. Look for terms like conspiracy theories and fringe theories that we use to make these new statistics irrelevant. And we're also having it censored on social media already for everyone's protection. And to help you further forget this new relevant information, we've also buried it on the CDC website. Good luck finding it. Only 6% of reported COVID deaths actually died from COVID? Now's a great time to discount people that speak of this new information with a well thought out, emotionally charged comment rebutting something they didn't say. Like, oh, so you're saying you don't even care about the people that did die of COVID? You're glad they're dead? You just want sick people to die? Well, because they said nothing to indicate that. Your emotionally fueled abstract assumption is obviously a more accurate expression of what they meant than what they expressed. Now, we plead with you not to use this new information as a rational basis to rethink the level of fear that you're living under, because rethinking your thinking could cause you to change your mind. And changing your mind is uncomfortable and a potential cause of COVID, because our science fiction is yet to prove otherwise. And new information is the new outdated information, so you'll want to stay with the times. So why should you be more scared than ever before? Because statistically speaking, your chances of not dying from COVID are 99.96%. And that means if you're in the 0.04% that does die from COVID, you have a 100% chance of dying. Take a look at the numbers. And luckily that means we're still justified in trying to ruin your lives to save your lives. In an effort to do so, please pay close attention to the COVID death count that will continue to run across your screen for you. Look, here it is! And so you can stay under your warm, wet blanket of fear, we'll neglect to adjust the death count for accuracy with respect to this new information. And we'll also continue to take away your rights for your protection. And just like how a woman abused by her husband might say, "He only hits me because he loves me," you can repeat, They're only taking away my rights to protect me, and you'll continue to surrender your rights because you're scared. Now that we've confused any clarity you might have been feeling on the new COVID death count information, you can go back to sleep. Please stay tuned for more updates on what you should be thinking and feeling.